Alright, okay. So, if I do this right, this is my, I guess, second tutorial. The other one covered the tile grid, so you should go check that out if you haven't before. That's definitely the place to start, because it is far easier to work with that and get something that looks good and works well in Dota than it is to do it here. So what we have is just kind of a basic tile map that is more or less left from last time, and we're just going to go through a lot of the other crap that's in Hammer. I shouldn't say crap. This is a fantastic tool, and it's really worked out well for me. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff here, and it can be very daunting if you're just jumping into it. So besides the tile editor, which is literally just one of the tools over here, just one. There's a whole bunch of other tools. There's all sorts of good stuff that, you know, comes into play and you have to work with. So starting from non-tool editor stuff, there's the selection tool, which will not select anything on the tile editor. This is both useful and extremely annoying, because if I decide, oh wait, I don't like this thing here, I have to go into the tile editor, I have to go to the selection thing, I have to change it, and then I have to go back out in order to do that. I can't just, you know, find it and change it. It's kind of annoying, but what you gonna do? So yeah, with nothing on here to select, this isn't terribly interesting. So let's just actually go ahead and create something. This is the block tool over here. Shift B is going to pull it up like Shift C pulls up the tile editor. Again, as I said in my other tutorial, keybinds are extremely important in using Hammer well and without killing yourself by, you know, having to find everything. So Shift B is the block tool. And what you can do is you just make blocks with it of different sizes that fit on your map. They do give you the sizing of it on the corners and stuff like that. If you remember the last one, for vision purposes, you need to have a 128 difference. So if you're making blocks that you hope to have vision be, you know, workable in Hammer or in Dota with vision, you want to probably operate on that kind of a height difference. Every block you paint is going to paint directly on the grid in the axis. And the way to change that is to hit either Shift Tab, or you go pick work plane from objects. And what you can do is you can shift the work plane. I'm going to shift it by 45 degrees. You can see when I drag this rotation tool that it's telling me how far I'm rotating it. So I already rotated it 45 degrees, so I'm going to leave it 0. This blue one is rotating on X and Y. Red rotates it kind of up and down, pitches it, and then green rolls it. And if you like to freehand it, you can grab the yellow ball and just go to town and figure out what work plane you want. That is not how I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it nice and snapped like this. So if it's Shift B again, now I'm working on this plane, and when I drag it, there it is, a nice angled block. Instead of doing that, let's set it back to normal. If you just open it up again and click anywhere, it'll set it back to normal. I can use the selection tool up here, which is Shift S, and I can click on a block and select it, and you can see it's got the bounds of the block set here. Once you have selected something that's in the tile editor, you can hit T in order to get the translation widget, you can hit R in order to get the rotation widget, you can hit E to get the scaling widget, and you can hit Q to get the edge adjustment. I don't know what the hell this one's called. But these over here are kind of similar. Translate tool, that's T, R for rotate, scale for E. There's a pivot tool as well. I think it's like O or something like that. I don't know. I don't really use it that much, but if you move the pivot point, then when you rotate, you can see it rotates around that pivot point instead of the center. I just don't know how to put it back to the center necessarily. Set origin to pivot, probably, yeah. So anyway, so T, this is the translation tool. It gives you this widget. Green lets you pull it only this way, only along this axis. Red, only along this axis. And blue, only up and down. If you grab the squares, it's 2 axis. So the blue is going to be only X and Y. Green is going to be only, you know, up and to the left. I don't know what axis I'm on anymore. Red is the same, but the other direction. If you grab the purple thing in the center, you've got full motion. You can move it everywhere. It's not all that useful because it's very easy to get confused. Using these translation gizmos is very useful because, especially, you can shift and click and it will clone in that direction. Clone, 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 clone. You can clone with any of the gizmos you want. R lets you rotate. So again, same thing as the work plane tool. It lets you rotate and it tells you how far. You can, you know, play with it like that. One thing to notice is that anytime you do any of this stuff, most textures have a walkable property that is going to cause Hammer to attempt to use them to make the terrain. So what you can see here is, despite me putting this on a crazy angle, Hammer's saying, okay, I can work with that. And it's got these blocked areas here, but you can walk up to that. There is only a 2D plane of navigation in Dota. There's no way to walk kind of like underneath this and be in the shadow. You can only walk up to the shadow here. Same goes on the other side. But you can see, like with this block here, if I just move it over a little bit, it takes some time. You have to move it to update it. You can see there's red around it, so you can't path up to that at all. I'm going to rotate it forward like this. You can see that now I've made a ramp, and it's automatically made this ramp pathable. You can't fall off the edges, and you can't go to anything up here on top. That's never going to work. Let's bring this one over. Use T, move it over like this, and then if we move it up, we can get it, and there we go. So you can see that now this is pathable. So right here, this whole thing works. You can walk up this ramp and get on this block, and you can't get off of it. Q lets you pull in individual sides like this. You can make things taller, shorter, you know, thinner, or fatter. E lets you scale things in both directions simultaneously. You grab the red, it scales both that way. Blue scales up and down. You can do, you know, 2-axis scaling like this, and you can do 3-axis scaling, which is sometimes very useful for certain things that I'll show you later in order to, yeah, scale it all up proportionally. Those are generally those tools are generally the same, regardless if you're working with meshes or entities, which we'll talk about in a second, and they're very useful. But let's go back to the block tool, Shift B to bring this up. There is also the ability to create quads. So this is not, it's a bleeding with the train. This is not a full block. It doesn't have all the sides of, like, you know, all 6 sides of the rectangle or whatever it is. It just has one mesh. And if we look from the bottom, you can see it doesn't have anything internal to it. Actually, neither do these guys. They're only on the outside. You can't see anything on the inside. And because it's just a mesh, sometimes that's better. Like, you only need a surface. Like when I was making, if you wanted to make, I don't know, something that sits above here, I can extend this, put it above the water, like this. Then, yeah, now it's just one. We don't need the rest of it to do that. We can just do that here. But there's also, besides quads, there's cylinders, and you can give it the number of edges you want it to have, because it's not going to be a perfect one. And yeah, since you can see the guards, you can make it a perfect circle if you get them lined up. Perfect cylinder anyway. And you can still translate this just as you would anything else. Oh, alright, so in translation and rotation, it's important to know what your snapping behavior is. Down here you can turn off snapping, and then you can, you know, get really, you know, loose with it. Or you can turn it on and change the grid snapping amount so that it only moves by that amount ever. You can come down here, mouse wheel to change it, or you can click to change it. The default is 64 because the navigation grid operates on 64 by 64 squares, so that's a good start. Angle snapping, you can snap it to, you know, 45-degree angles. The default is 15. You can go even lower than that. Well, rotating the cylinder is not going to do anything, but yeah, we can rotate this. It's still, in this white here, is going to give you the amount you're rotating by. So yeah, being able to adjust these is very useful in order to position things correctly on your map. Additionally, you can also position by manually setting the numbers here. So I just moved this to 0, 0, kept its height the same, and everything like that. Hey, hold on a second, I'm making a video. Other properties that you can set on meshes. You can set the color, and it will tint it. Things that are grayscale are going to tint a lot better than things that aren't, but they will still potentially tint some. This also happens to do, you know, matters a lot with the texture, and white just means, you know, basically use the texture itself. Don't tint it at all. There's other stuff in here, like alpha and things like that, that don't generally tend to work from my experience, so I generally don't bother with them. I'm sure somebody else better than me would know how else to do that sort of thing. Okay. Let's finish off this block tool here. We've got spikes, which doesn't look like a spike, but if you pull it up like that, now it's more spiky. I don't know, I don't use most of these tools that much. and a sphere, which also does not look very spherical. Now it looks like a football. Whatever. These do work, and you can use them for various purposes, but like I said, because the Dota nav grid is only 2D, it's going to get confused as hell when it's looking at stuff like this. So if it's not just a cosmetic thing on your map, this might not be what you really want to have. Okay. So, one other thing. Block tools. We have, I'm going to hit Shift-Z here to switch back to this panel so I can look at my materials. We have the ability to adjust the materials on them. So, if you just click and drag, you can do that. If you choose a material and then hit Shift-T, that's not a good material, hit Shift-T, it will apply that material directly to it. This is your active material over here. Another useful thing is Control-M. If you hold Control-M while your mouse is over something, it will select that material. So you can, grab this material from here, paint it on there, and, you're good to go. There's a lot of different materials here, but these ones that have the multi layers, this is a blend material. And so you can potentially blend the individual faces on this thing to be whatever you want to. We'll talk about that later. But for now, just, you can apply different materials. There's also more active materials that, can be pretty interesting. Like, here's a lava tool. This one is also multi-blend, but you can see that it's actually moving. And there are ways to mess with, the orientation and everything else like that it's going through. Besides water, there's lava. So this is, well, an ocean, but it's not going to move until I blend paint it. You can search for multiple terms at once if you want. And yeah, so this is like, it's like a really transparent water. It's going to look weird as hell up here. It's a little bit better there, but not much. Anyway, there are a lot of active materials you can mess with, and a lot you can do there. It's a ton of stuff that you can do with materials. I certainly don't even know the half of it. Okay. So in terms of messing with meshes, there's also tools like this one, which is the clipping tool. I don't use it that much, but what you can do is you can clip your meshes either into one piece or the other, or clip it into both. And when you hit enter, what it's going to do is you're going to have two different meshes now instead of the one, and you can operate with them individually. It's tricky to use, right? Like, you can see, like, now I'm missing faces and stuff like that, so, be careful exactly how you do this stuff. Yeah, there's a mirror tool, which actually, I don't know if I've ever used, so I probably shouldn't be explaining how to use it, but that should let you mirror things across the other one. Anyway, all right, let's talk about the selection stuff. We'll make another just regular block of, not this. Actually, wait, change off of sphere, regular block, regular testing material. Okay, so what we have now is object selection. This is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 select different kind of mesh setting stuff. Objects is 5. This lets you select individual objects. It also lets you select entities, but the whole mesh is what you'll get. Groups let you select if, we group these together, it would give me the whole thing. And meshes, again, is going to give me the whole mesh. There is some distinction between that, like you can see here. There are different ways to think about it, but really, anything beyond here is going to get you the same thing, and anything below here is going to get you the individual pieces. If you hit 3, that gives you the face tool, and this lets you select an individual face on this mesh. So I can select this one, I can hit delete, it's gone. I can hit, it's gone. I can hit F, and this will invert the normals, so now I have only insides instead of outside. That's a neat trick for doing certain things, but there's a lot of stuff here. These tools are very complex, and this is why, generally stick to the tile grid and you'll be more than happy with everything you need to do. But there is some very useful stuff that's good to know about working with meshes in general. You can mess with the texture scaling pretty reasonably and make it do different things. Generally don't need to do that. Sometimes you can make it align, like where's the lava one? Or, yeah, let's do lava. So I'm going to put lava. Now it's only on this top face because the materials are applied per face. And you can see it's flowing in that direction. There's a tint selected face. I turned that off. So now I've selected this face, but it's not tinted. If I go up here and select align to view, you can see I've just rotated the direction of the flow. That's pretty useful for, setting up how you want things to flow. And one of the few things I know how to use in this one. Again, yeah, you can change how the textures themselves work, but I don't know, it's beyond my understanding generally. Okay. So other stuff here, if we... Oh, right, I tint off. So if we delete this face, you know... Let's not delete the face. Let's edge cut it. You can cut faces in order to get, you know, individual ones if you need to do stuff like that and subdivide them that way, but it's generally better to just subdivide it like this. Untint it again. So if I hit 1, it's going to subdivide it 1 time, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. This individual subdivision allows for more vertices in the face to be exploited for your displacement painting, which allows you to give curves and hills and bumps and stuff like that. Or it allows you to paint on the surface with different blends. So this is the paint tool. It's Shift V, and it should let me paint on this thing. Now, when you see that exclamation point, it means you're not selected this current thing. If you hit Shift right click, it'll add it to the selection. There are other ways to do it, but yeah. But now I can draw on this just like in the Paint Objects tool of the tile grid, and I can draw in my own blend of stuff. So I can, you know, set this up however I want. And the thing is, the subdivision of the vertices is what I'm painting on. If I check Show Verts, you can see that I have each of these vertices to work with because I subdivided the face. If I didn't do that, it wouldn't have worked well. You can adjust the channels, which ones are on and which ones are painting, in order to get a different effect. And of course, you can adjust the radius that you're painting and the strength. If you do middle mouse up and down, you get a strength painter, so I can paint, yeah, fuller effect on this or not. And yeah, this is very useful for certain things. Like I use this for my ocean painting and the lava in my Hunter Mark of the Hunter map. There's also flood fill, so you can have the whole thing painted with a certain style, and then go through and, you know, maybe make, I don't know, like a smaller flow cutting through it like this. So you just get a little accent or something like that. It's whatever you want to do. It takes a lot of work, and this is more getting into actual artistic, you know, artistry required zone than I'm any good at. So I tend to, you know, stick to the low-hanging fruit when I'm working with this stuff. All right, so there are some other things you can do. These aren't as useful. You can detach individual faces and use the translation tool with T, and now I pulled it apart from that, the mesh itself. If I don't detach it, and then oops, I need to go back enough. If I don't attach it and then move it, the whole thing will move with the face. So you can translate individual faces and, you know, have the whole mesh translate with it. You can go to the edge tool and do similarly. Edges, you hit 2, now it lets me select individual edges, and I can, yeah, translate this out, translate this out. You get it, start getting it real crazy real fast. Like, this doesn't even make sense. It's telling me that's not a valid shape and to fuck off. So we're gonna keep it valid for now. There's also things like if I delete this face and go to edges, I can like double click this and it'll select the whole thing around there, and I can just choose fill hole and get the face back. I can do bridge. No, I can't do bridge. It has to be between two different things. Anyway, as you can see, there's a shitload of edge tools. Like, it's ridiculous how many of these are. I don't know what half of them do, and I've had very little need to use them, so somebody better than me will have to do a guide on those if you find yourself in need. You can also work with individual vertices instead of faces, and again, a lot of stuff here that I personally don't need to, or don't generally need to know about. One final thing on this, I guess, is that I've subdivided this by up to 5. I can cut that down. You can see actually the material is changing the painting on it behind there. But you can also bake subdivision, and what it's done is it's taken the face and it's turned it into small individual faces of their own. And you can actually then go and bake it again. So now this one has got all these tiny little faces that I can paint on individually. That's probably going to get really expensive, but if you have like a massive, you know, lava flow or something like this, and I set this here, like this might not be enough detail in certain areas, you know, to work with. So you might need to, you know, bake the subdivision, and then, you know, I'm going to work with these in a smaller way and do more. Go to the paint, shift right click, and now I can paint on it. And I've got a lot more vertices to work with in this area than on the outside if I wanted to do that. An accenting island or something like that. That's more or less all I know about these things for mesh painting. Like I said, the tile editor stuff is going to make your life a lot easier than having to do any of this stuff. But if you do, hopefully this will be helpful. I guess I'll cut this here, and I will talk about entities next, because there's a lot of shit with entities, and I don't know, I don't even know where to begin to start, so I might need to collect my thoughts and answer some questions, but thanks for watching.